Hello, everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of the Hold Your Peace podcast. My name is Whitney Bigelow. I am your host, and I'm so excited to finally be doing this. This podcast is something that I have been thinking about and wanting to do for a long time, and so I'm so excited that it's finally happening, and I'm so thankful that you're here, and I hope you'll stick around for this whole episode. It's going to be a little bit wild, a little bit crazy. So I just want to introduce myself first, and then we will get into our topic for today, which is the history of popular wedding traditions. My name is Whitney. I am a wedding videographer based in Salt Lake City, Utah. I travel the country filming people's happiest days, and I am just still in shock and disbelief that this is my career. I am literally obsessed with weddings and talk about them way too much, as my husband can tell you. So I figured it was time to start a podcast where I could actually put all of that wedding talk to good use. So thank you for being here. I feel like people love to talk about weddings. You usually will know somebody who's getting married, or like to talk about your own wedding or just trends that you're seeing. They're like this really kind of weird, huge thing that happened in people's lives, and so talking about them is way fun. And I hear conversations when I'm in airports and restaurants and just out and about of people discussing the weddings that they've been to, or that they're planning, or that their friends are going to. And so this podcast is for brides and grooms and just wedding enthusiasts wherever you may live. Most episodes are going to have a special guest that I'm going to interview from some part of the wedding industry, or it could be a past bride or future bride, or just somebody related to weddings somehow. Today, though, I'm by myself for this first episode, but I'm really excited about what I'm going to be chatting with you all about today, and that is wedding traditions. So I want to start off by just saying that a tradition itself, if we talk about what it is, it's a thing that people do that other people see those people doing and think, hey, that's a great idea. And then they start to implement that into their own lives, and they pass it down to their children. And that process just continues itself until it's like a widespread thing. So a lot of these traditions they were never like mandated by any religion or government or anything like that. It was just something that somebody started doing 700 years ago. And we still do it today because so many people picked up on it. But today we're going to unpack some of those things and talk about where they came from, what they mean, and whether or not we should still be participating in them today. The reason I wanted to talk about this is I think it's important to understand the origin of a tradition before you implement it in your own celebration. So, for example, we're going to talk today about the bouquet toss and the garter toss, and being able to understand what those are, what they mean, where they came from, is going to help couples make a more educated decision about if they're going to participate in them or not, instead of just having seen it at other weddings and just following suit. So I want you guys to think a little bit more deeply about the things that you're doing at your wedding and what they might mean. So a lot of these traditions, we don't know exactly why they started, but we do know that they were used. So some of this is just speculation, but it's entertaining nonetheless. So without further ado, here are 10 wedding traditions and where they came from. The first tradition is the engagement ring. So anthropologists believe this tradition originated from a Roman custom in which wives wore rings attached to small keys indicating their husband's ownership. So it goes back to ancient Rome. Women wore a ring that symbolized that they belonged to their husband. Literally, they were their property. Love that for us. But then the first diamond wedding ring on record was in 1477. Archduke Maximilian of Austria commissioned the first diamond ring on record for Mary of Burgundy. And then obviously royalty were trendsetters, so this sparked this trend for diamond rings for European aristocracy and nobility. And we ended up today with how most of us do a diamond wedding ring. So nothing really that edgy there, but wedding rings have been around for a really long time, longer than I even realized. Okay, the second tradition is bridesmaids. Bridesmaids didn't used to wear like some purple dress while the bride was in white. They would all wear kind of the same thing as the bride. And the reason that they did this was to confuse the evil spirits that would supposedly come and try to attack the bride. I don't really know, but I guess if everybody's dressed the same, the evil spirits can't tell who's who, and I don't know. So I guess like a wedding day used to be kind of dangerous for the bride. And I'm not really entirely sure why. People used to believe it was kind of this like in-between state where she wasn't in the protection of her parents' home, but she also wasn't in the protection of her new husband's home yet. And so the evil spirits or even just like the bad guys in town had like an opening to like swoop in and do some damage. So a lot of this was just about trying to like protect the bride. Bridesmaids being one of them. So one website said that they would like surround the bride in a circle as they walked to the place where the ceremony would be. So thank goodness that now we just have to wear like a tacky satin dress and don't have to worry about evil spirits, I guess. Okay, the next tradition is about bridal bouquets. So this one's hilarious. So in the 15th century, brides started carrying bouquets. So that's kind of the earliest recorded time that they held flowers with them on their wedding day. And supposedly the reason they did this was to hide their bodily odor. People back then were really stinky. They didn't bathe very often. And so apparently they held these flowers to hide their smell and make themselves more attractive on their wedding day. I don't know if that's true. They also supposedly, another evil spirits thing, they would put garlic and dill and really strong smelling herbs into their bouquets in order to, again, scare off the evil spirits. So holding bouquets to make yourself smell good and or scare off evil spirits. The next tradition is wearing of the veil. So where this came from originally was in Rome. They wore a thing called a flamium. I don't know how it's pronounced, but it was either a red or a yellow piece of cloth. It wasn't white. And they would wrap it around the bride's entire body. And the idea was to make her look like the flame of a candle, or like fire, so the evil spirits would not come and get her. Again, I'm telling you, literally half of these have to do with the evil spirits. So that's where it started. And then with the advent of the white wedding dress, which we'll talk about a little bit later, the veils became white to just match the getup, and it just kind of evolved into holding the veil over the face before they got married and all of that. I mean, who knows? So brides, just be thankful on your wedding morning you're not like being bombarded by your mother-in-law about evil spirit stories. Like, things could be worse. I'm just saying. Okay, the fifth tradition is honeymoons. So I guess in the 5th century, so the 400s, is that right? A really long time ago. Couples would drink this alcohol that was honey-based. It was called mead, and they would drink it on their 1-month anniversary. So like their first moon together, they would drink this honey alcohol. So honeymoon, that's kind of like where the phrase came from. And then the idea of going on a trip right after your wedding kind of started in like 19th century Britain, when couples would go on a trip right after their wedding to visit the friends and family who couldn't make it to their celebration. So it wasn't like some romantic getaway to the beach. It was going to see your great aunt Thelma who couldn't make it to your wedding. So not quite as private and romantic as we now make it. Honeymoons are personally my favorite wedding tradition. Who does not want a vacation? I love it. Okay, the 6th tradition is the dad walking the bride down the aisle and giving her away. So we've all seen this at ceremonies we've been to. The dad and the bride link arms, walk down the aisle, and then the groom will take her arm and take her up to the altar where the ceremony takes place. This has been going on for a really long time. The first recorded ceremony that included the giving away of the bride was in 1549, the Book of Common Prayer at the Church of England. So again, an English tradition. And I mean, back then we know women did not have many rights, and they were literally the property of their parents, and then they became the property of their husbands. So, I mean, nowadays it's more of a symbolic giving away of, this is our little girl, take care of her, whatever. But back then it was literally, this was our property and now she's yours. Here you go. So not the most progressive idea. I think people are kind of moving away from that now. I mean, it can still be a totally sweet moment with you and your dad if you want to do that. But people are, now having both their parents walk them down the aisle, or just walking down alone, or they're walking down side by side with the groom, which I think is fabulous. So yeah, there are options now, but that's kind of where that started from, giving the bride away. Okay, the seventh tradition is a white wedding dress. So before the 1800s, people just kind of wore whatever for their weddings. I mean, throughout recorded history, really, people have dressed up for a wedding ceremony. It's always been something that was important and that people wanted to look their best for, but there wasn't like a specific uniform or color scheme until in 1840, Queen Victoria of England got married to Prince Albert, and she was just this high fashion, trend-setting, obviously a queen, royalty. So everybody wanted to copy what she did, and she wore this really elegant white wedding dress. And there was a lot of attention from the press. It was highly publicized, and so people copied her. The internet says she wore an 8-piece bodice with an open neckline. The sleeves and the neckline were well trimmed. It had a visible off-shoulder dress with a short puff sleeve. We love the puff sleeve trend. Go Victoria. It also had a deep V-shaped waistline. Her satin dress had a full floor-length skirt and was over 6 yards long. That's 18 feet. So the dress was carried by 12 attendants as she walked down the aisle. Can you imagine something like that today? Just having like literally 12 bridesmaids carrying your dress behind you? I'm screaming. That is awesome. So, but I guess back then white fabric was really hard to get because it was like so clean and not lots of things back then were. So it became this sign of status and wealth if you were able to have a white dress on your wedding day. So it's kind of what everybody aspired for, was having a white gown. And then after that was kind of where the ideas of, oh, the white dress is a symbol of purity and virginity and all those kinds of things, they came after the fact. That's not where it actually originated. So okay, now we're going to get into my least favorite wedding tradition, which is the garter and bouquet tosses. So buckle up. I'm just going to read this straight from my notes. It said that family and friends would wait outside the nuptial bedchamber until they were shown evidence, like sheets, stockings, or a garter, that the marriage had been consummated. So, family and friends, right after the ceremony, follow the bride and groom to a bedroom. They shut the door, and then after the deed has supposedly been done, they want proof, aka a piece of the bride's underwear. Literally, I cannot. So the garter eventually became a symbol of good luck. People thought that if they could get a piece of that whole thing, then it would bring them good luck and they would be able to get married and have the same opportunities. So guests started to make a game of trying to like take the garter off of the bride, like take it off of her so they could have that piece of luck, or they would take a piece of her clothing or her dress, or just so the bride began just tossing it into the crowd, or the groom did, either one, to like distract them and also not be like assaulted. It feels very aggressive to me. I'm not sure I like it very much. So today, obviously, the groom will usually go up her dress with his face, pull it out with his teeth. I don't know why we had to start that, and then throw it into a crowd of single men. And the person who catches it supposedly gets married next. The bouquet toss actually has a really similar history. People, again, wanted that good luck that comes from the bride specifically, and so throwing the bouquet was the way of giving good luck to the women in the crowd. It sounds horrible, truly. This whole thing sounds just so backwards, but I found this little blurb that kind of puts it in perspective a little bit. It says, while ripping off pieces of someone's wedding dress might seem over the top today, it definitely does. Back then, marriage was often a woman's only form of upward mobility. Marriage could uplift a woman and her family out of poverty and was often more so a political and economic move than a romantic one. Single women were quite literally desperate to change their circumstances by marrying a man that could provide for her and her family. So definitely a different society, different times. Thank goodness women have opportunities to start businesses and provide for themselves and, be the bosses of their own lives, but women back then did not have that opportunity, and so it makes sense they were desperate to get any piece of good luck that would allow her to marry somebody who was rich, pretty much. This one is one I don't really understand why it stuck around for so long. It feels very archaic and outdated. Yeah, so you do you, but that's where it came from, and now you are all educated and hopefully will refrain from participating in that because it's weird and sexist. Cool. Okay. All right. We're coming kind of to the end. Our 9th tradition we're going to talk about is the phrase tie the knot. I'm sure you've heard that many times. It's a very popular euphemism about getting married. So the phrase came from one of the oldest wedding traditions, which was a hand fasting ceremony. So this is an ancient Celtic ritual from the medieval era where people would tie knots of cloth around the couple's hands, and it symbolized the two of them becoming one to bind them together, which is actually kind of cute. Do people do that anymore? I've never seen it, but it sounds kind of sweet. So there's an idea for you. But yeah, that's where tie the knot comes from, is they used to tie little knots of fabric around the couple's hands as part of their wedding ceremony. So kind of sweet. Okay, and our final tradition we're going to cover is the wedding cake. So in ancient Rome, again, a lot of these go back to Rome because so much of Western culture does. Marriages were sealed when a groom smashed a barley cake over the bride's head. So there was a little piece of cake and they would break it over their head and the crumbs would fall down. And it was supposed to symbolize fertility. Like bread is life. It symbolized fertility. They'd break it over the bride's head and it meant they were going to have all the babies. So good luck with that. But it also symbolized like a prosperous future, and sometimes unmarried guests would take a piece of the cake and take it home and put it under their pillow, hoping that they too could, again, have some of that luck, get married, have some babies. First comes marriage, then comes baby. Wait, what? First comes dating, then comes marriage, then comes homegirl with the baby carriage. That's what it is. Okay, anyways. So, there you go. Thank you guys so much for listening today. I so appreciate you being here. Tell your friends, tell all your engaged people to tune in to this and all of our future episodes. We are going to have some really, really fun guests that I'm so excited about. So make sure you're following my Instagram. It's at bigelow.video. That's where you can keep up with everything for the podcast as well as watch my videography work, which is always really fun to have on your feed. And I will see you guys next week.